Hello?
Oh, hello.
Are you there?
It's me.
No, it's me. That's him.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah, so welcome to another RiderCamTV video, and we're going to start a bit of a series here, aren't we, Mark?
I'm going to try to.
Yeah, and the series is all about how to control a bike and really basic stuff, because there's a lot of people out there that are just learning to do their CBT. They might be young people wanting to start a biking career, and by that I mean riding bikes. It might be returning bikers that rode bikes before all of the controls changed to the left hand side for the gears and all that sort of stuff, or just for people that are returning to bikes or want to ride a bike but have got those, I guess, tiny questions that make a really big difference, and you almost think that they're silly questions, like where is the clutch, where's the brake, how do I operate the brake, how do I change gear, how do you get clutch bite. So hopefully people are like that. It's a bit of a series that we're going to start doing, so at periodic times there'll be a new video coming out about different stuff that's really basic to try and help new people into biking and answer some of those questions that they might have that become big issues that might stop them riding.
Yep. It's a massive introduction.
Yeah, we're good.
We're going to talk about bikes. Two blokes who know nothing about bikes talking about bikes.
We know nothing.
As usual.
But you know that already, don't you?
Right, let's get on then.
Yeah. So today's video is all about how you sit on a bike, what posture you can have, I guess, whether you need to touch the floor, and basic controls of your motorbike. So Mark is going to demonstrate all of this. How cool is that?
Here I am then, sat on a bike. And bear with us, this is going to be really simple, basic instructions for people who've probably not ridden bikes before, getting back to it, just like Toby said. But we're going to talk about the handlebars to begin with. And the way the handlebars are set up traditionally now on most bikes are, on this side you have the clutch.
That's the left.
Which is the left, my left, as we're looking at me.
Yeah.
All about me. We have the clutch, and on the right hand side we have the brake. So this is the clutch, works just by pulling in, and on the other side the brake. Now the brake controls the front brake, but on a lot of modern bikes now it's also linked to the rear brake, so it applies pressure to the front but also a little bit of pressure to the rear as well, and it's just simply by pulling in. Also on this side you have the accelerator, which, if you can see, works like this.
And it flicks back, doesn't it? So
always
doesn't get stuck.
No, it never gets stuck. Okay. We also have rear view mirrors, which are adjustable, and each person is different, but you need to see the biggest vision. Vision, that sounds like a massive vision. You need to see the widest area of view behind you, because it's important to know what's coming up behind you. So without getting too complicated, there are basic controls that are fitted to every bike. So we have the indicators here, and they simply work by pulling left and right on the lever, and to switch it off you press it in. Underneath is the horn. On most bikes it's fitted in the same place, and just by simply pressing the button in, that activates the horn. Going back to the indicators, on some bikes like the BMW, the older BMWs, they had indicator switches that were on left and right side, and the cut off was on the left side. Some people like that. I actually like that.
Yeah, I did as well. It made much more sense, didn't it?
Yeah, but we've gone over to what the vast majority of bike people have. So the indicators left, right, and off. Forget all the rest of the stuff that's on this. This is quite a complicated bike, but if you can just see down the front there, that is the flash headlight flasher. So you pull it in to flash your main beam, and you push it out for your main beam to stay on. And
it just clicks, just to give you that feeling.
And when you want to switch it off, you just pull it back in. You might notice that we've got these two little reservoirs on bikes. Now, most bikes have these here now, and this is the clutch fluid reservoir and the brake fluid reservoir. And on the front, there's a little spyglass to see how
not on that one?
Not on that one, but it's the clutch.
Yeah, on that one.
On that one there. And also for the rear brake, there'll be one situated somewhere towards the rear of the bike for the rear brake. Talk about the ignition. On this bike, it has a keyless ignition, which is just pressing a button and the ignition will then switch on. But in most bikes, this is where your key would be, and it'll be a normal ignition key where you turn it for power on, and then I want to get a bit more for the engine to start, and then release the key and it goes back to its normal position. Other bikes have them, older bikes may have them fitted down the side here. Somewhere there'll be an ignition down here, but that's getting a bit rare now. To switch it on for keyless, just a simple case of pressing a button.
It's quite a funky screen.
It's a lovely screen. Now the dashboard, I'm very lucky because this is a digital dashboard, so I've got a digital speedometer. You've got an N there, which is for neutral. Not all bikes will have this. Obviously this is a 2018 bike, but all bikes will have a green light or an N to show you when the gears are in neutral. And as soon as you go into first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever, that will change to whatever corresponding number it is. On this bike it's got the fuel range, and this is the rev counter here.
And why is it in red?
Because you don't want to go in the red. Okay, so you've got the best range for your engine to work in is somewhere around about in the grey area, and then once you get up and into the red, then you're really over revving the engine, so you don't necessarily go up there. And that may change. Once the engine is running on this bike, it goes up to about 7,000 or 8,000, I think.
Yeah. So this is one of those newfangled bikes that changes the display in terms of how you're riding.
Yeah.
But most bikes, like my old bike, are just an analog display.
Yeah. Talked about the ignition and either using a key or keyless start like this one has here. And the way to start the bike on this bike is with the red button here. You see the little hazard sign there. So all you do is press it and it will start the engine. I've switched it off because it's a bit noisy. Now if you look at the top of that switch, it says stop on the top of it. Now this is called the kill switch, and if you want to stop the bike engine quickly, all you do is press that switch and it automatically cuts the engine off. You have to replace it back to the mid position again straight afterwards.
And the ignition, when you press the ignition to turn it on, it's on a spring loaded thing, isn't it? So it always goes back to the normal position.
Yeah. Now I know people who use that button all the time to switch their bikes on and off. When they've got keyless starts and all the rest of it. I personally don't use that because I've had issues when I've been away on tours where people's kill switches have eventually just given up because it's only a rocker switch and it gets used far too much. So my advice to anybody who has this kind of bike would be to always use the stop button. That's just my opinion, which people will hate. So let's talk about how you sit on the bike, and this is obviously varies depending what kind of bike you've got. If you've got a sport bike, you might be sort of sat really quite forward. If you've got a cruiser, you might have your arms in a different high low position, but basically you find a position on the bike that is comfortable for you. And the way it should be is your elbows are gently flexed, your shoulders are relaxed, and you should be quite upright. If you're sat like that, I would suggest you're not in a good position for riding, and it won't take very long before you start getting back problems and aches and pains, and it's not very comfortable. So a nice, easy, relaxed position where you can keep your head upright and see above the screen. Nice, good round view.
Okay. Do you need to touch the floor?
When we talk about touching the floor, depending on what kind of course you're doing, if you're doing your direct access course or your CBT course, whatever it might be, they will always tell you to put your left foot down first. People get a little bit worried about putting their foot down and that they need to have both feet down, but to be honest, it's a personal issue. When you do advanced riding, they tell you to use mainly your right foot, but that's going ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, and the reason that when Mark says about the left foot down, when you get to things like advanced, they then talk about putting different feet down for different reasons and having a different control. But on the CBT, it's compulsory basic training, and that's exactly what it means. It's basic training of how to ride a bike so you're safe on the road. So when you go towards your CBT, they will nearly always, I think it's part of the the training structure that they have, that you will put your left foot down, and we'll talk about the reasons why, but a bit later. But one of the reasons why is so that you can always have control with your right hand and your right foot on the brake, no matter where you are, so that you can stop. And that if you're on a hill, different things happen, but it's just so that you've got the control really easily, so that you can focus on what you're actually doing.
Okay, so how do we change gear? Well, some bikes are very, very technical, and you only need to pull the clutch in, and then it's the last time you need to use the clutch. But on this, for the purpose of this video, we're going to explain how you change gear by using the clutch. Now, to start off, the bike is in a stationary position, obviously, and we're going to go into first gear. So the clutch is pulled in, and using the gear lever, which is down here, the foot is pressed down. And then the clutch is slowly released out using the accelerator to pull yourself away slowly from a stationary position.
And it'd be like getting clutch bite on a car. So most people, I would have thought, going for a motorbike would have had some idea of how to ride a car, where you've got the clutch and you find the clutch brake with the accelerator. Same principle, but you're using your hands rather than your feet.
It is, yeah. A little bit more technical sometimes, I think, because there's a lot more happening. There's just your foot, 2 feet working, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, but you know, and once you're moving, then you need to change gears up. Bikes are a little bit different to how cars work. You know, in a car you up through the gears straight away to get to the highest gear you can go in. Bikes, you can rev them a lot longer, and that's another discussion point perhaps. So let's assume we're in first gear now. We want to move up to second gear, so the clutch will come in, the revs drop off, down to the clutch pedal, the gear lever, and then it's up.
And it's a defined click that you can not only hear, because the engine is making a different sound, but you can actually feel it on your foot.
Yeah, and once it's gone into gear, let the clutch out, and then you carry on using the accelerator to power yourself along. Now, most bikes are 6-speed, and when you'll hear people talk about 1 gear down and then 5 up, basically, if you look at the gear lever, and now assuming that I'm in second gear, so if I go up again, that's third, that's fourth, that's fifth, and that's sixth. And each time I do that gear maneuver with my foot, I've got to pull the clutch in to change it. And then to go down, that's 5, that's 4, that's 3, that's 2, and that's 1. Now to find neutral, it's just above the first gear. So you bring your foot back up, and it's like a half click, it's just a gentle click sometimes, and you'll find yourself into the neutral position. So we've changed our gear, and we're saying, say we're in third gear, we're just cruising along 30 miles an hour, whatever, in traffic. The position of your foot on the gear side of the bike would be in something either like this, where your foot is not touching the gear lever, it's usually out to one side, you'll find eventually, or some people ride, depending on the bike, with their feet like that. On this particular bike it's quite comfortable to do that, then you don't have to move your foot backwards and forwards. So up through the gears, and each time you change gear, your foot will automatically almost move away from the gear lever. The position of the foot when you're riding on the rear brake is it's very hard to cover the rear brake, and that's quite dangerous because your foot might sit on it anyway. So when the brake is not being used, the foot is either in this position, just on the balls of your feet, or in this particular bike, this is a comfy riding position with your foot away from the brake and off to one side. So we mentioned the brake before, excuse me, we mentioned the brake before, and the front brake is here, used on the right hand side of the bike, and it's used in conjunction with the accelerator. So as you accelerate, decelerate to brake, then you can pull on the lever. But you also have the rear brake. The rear brake lever is here, this thing here that I'm kicking with my foot. Now, the rear brake on most bikes is not going to stop a bike. It's just there mostly for slow manoeuvring. And if your bike brakes are linked, then as you pull on the front brake lever, they will automatically send a little bit of braking resistance to the rear brake anyway. So the way the rear brake works is just like any normal brake. If you press down, the brake comes on, and when you lift it off, the brake comes off.
And the same with cars, the harder you press it, the harder the brakes are applied, aren't they?
Bike rear brakes are pretty ineffectual in a lot of bikes though, but you know, that's just the way it is. And the way you can tell how effectual they are, on the front wheels, you'll see there are 2 disc brakes, big disc brakes, and on the rear there's only one smaller one.
And that's because the front brake is key, isn't it? That keeps a lot of the control. A lot of people, I think, when they're riding their bikes, when they're new to it, will think that the back brake should stop them, but the back brake, as you'll learn, could take you into quite a big skid if you ram that on, and the front brake is where you apply most of your pressure. It's something like, is it 40, 60, something like that? Where there'll be more pressure on the front, and it's quite counterintuitive when you first start riding, isn't it, to understand that, but when you start riding, naturally that will happen, so it's something you kind of don't need to worry about. So hopefully the first really basic controls of your bike are quite self-explanatory. Now that you've seen this wonderful video demonstrated by Mark, he's learned a lot, what's he like. But if you've liked the video, give it a massive thumbs up. It does really help us. We'll be doing a lot more of these basic videos in a series which you'll find in a playlist as they come out. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.